Hello, everybody. So today is day 8 of 12 days of testifying to God's goodness and His miracle working power. Thanks to those of you who've been praying for me. I'm feeling a little bit better. My throat still gets kind of scratchy and I have to stop and even like now and cough a little bit. So I apologize for that in the videos, but I'm getting better. But today is day 8. New beginnings. I like numbers, but like I've said in the previous videos, if you haven't seen testimonies 1 through 7, I encourage you to go back. I've just been sharing as led by the Lord, testimonies, 12 days of testifying up until Christmas of things that God has done for me in my life, His miraculous working power. So on yesterday, which was day 7, I had shared with you about my son Joshua, who was the miracle, who was the boy after I was told that I may never have a live boy, how he was born 10 years later on my first son who passed, Noah. On his birthday, and how God brought everything full circle. But I told you there were a lot of elements to the story regarding Joshua and the pregnancy with him. And I'm not going to get into all of those. I'm just going to share the things that I feel the Lord leads me to share. But I wanted to share today because I feel like people need to know that God is a healer, that God can still do the impossible. He's the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. There's nothing that has changed about Him. And if you watch my videos, you've seen and heard that the things that He's done in my life have been things that truly have been the miraculous, things that have defeated the odds, that have gone against what man says. But we know that God has the final say. So if you're not a believer, or if you are a believer and you've lost hope, prayerfully these videos will encourage you and give you hope. And if you're not a believer, prayerfully you will draw near unto God as He's been lifted up to know that He does exist. He is the creator. He is the author and the finisher of our faith. So after I had Joshua, actually I just want to give you a little brief history. So I have mentioned before that I don't do well with medication. My body really rejects a lot of meds. I don't do well with medication. My heart and my blood pressure is affected by meds, especially pain meds. And so they discovered really quickly that I don't do well with meds at the doctor, and even with pain meds, even with an epidural. So when I had my first son, Noah, they gave me an epidural, but I was still lifting my legs. I was like, I'm feeling these pains, and they were like, you shouldn't be feeling that pain. My second son, it was the same thing. So they'd given me tried to give me medicine in my IV that had a terrible effect that actually took me out of here. They got me back. I mentioned that briefly in one of my videos. Then when I had Promise, even though I was in a whole nother hospital, even with my history, they were like, well, we're going to try the epidural. But once again, it didn't work. I felt everything. I was like, oh my gosh, like holding on to the rail, shaking. They was like, you shouldn't be feeling anything. So they discovered that I'm in like the 15th percentile, whatever, where those things don't work. And also I have back pain and problems. So it could be, related to that as well. But with my son, Joshua, I told them, I said, look, don't even try the epidural. It's not going to work. Ain't even no need putting myself through this, putting y'all through it. We know it's not going to work. I have a history. So they were like, well, we're going to have to do something, because we don't want you in all of this pain. And I was like, I'm fine. Like, I've been through it before, but they really wanted me comfortable. So they decided to give me some kind of narcotic that was supposed to be safe, I guess. I didn't want it, but they gave it to me anyway. And all it did was made me throw up. I just threw up the whole time. So imagine being in labor, intense labor, where your contractions are very intense and you're constantly vomiting. Like, that is not a good feeling. So then they were like, well, we need to do something else. So they brought the anesthesiologist in and they were like, let's give her something else and let's try this medicine. And the anesthesiologist says it's going to have 1 or 2 effects. He was like, it's either probably not going to work at all. He was like, or it may knock her out. And so, of course, that's what it did. It knocked me out. It put me in a coma. For those people who have been in a coma and have come out, I know they've shared how sometimes they hear people. It is a devastating thing. I could not wake up. I could not move. I could not do anything, but I can hear everything that they were saying. I could hear my husband and the nurse talking. Oh, here comes a big one. Here comes a big contraction. She's not moving. She must don't feel it. I could hear everything. And inside, internally, I was screaming. I was trying to talk to them, and I could not wake up. And it took hours before that medicine wore off. But anyway, so after I had him and everything and I went home, my blood pressure was a little elevated, and I never have had high blood pressure with none of my pregnancies, even with the death of my kids and all the trauma and everything that happened. My blood pressure was never high, but my blood pressure was a little elevated after I had him, and they said, oh, it may have just been, you know, just everything that was going on. We had a death in our family, and it was a lot of things that was happening. They was like, maybe that's why or whatever. So I went home, and I was at home. I was feeling really sick. Like, as soon as I got home, I was like, I just don't feel good. And like 2 days, I went to the doctor for my checkup. Like, I was discharged on like a Friday, and then like that Monday, or it was that Saturday, and then that Monday I went to the doctor. When I got there, my blood pressure was really, really high. She was like, we're going to have to admit you. And I was like, you're not admitting me. I just had a baby. I got my boy. I got my miracle. And he's 2 days old. I'm not going to the hospital. Like, I just came up here for a checkup. She's like, no, you're going to have to get admitted. So they admitted me to the hospital, and they let me they put a little bassinet in the room to bring him back because I really went into a panic. And they tried to get my blood pressure down, but it was not going like they wanted it to. So I was in the hospital for a couple of days, and then they started giving me some meds to try and decrease it. And it started to go down a little bit. Then they discharged me with some high blood pressure medicine to hopefully calm my blood pressure. Well, I was at home for about another day and a half, and I passed out. My husband had found me stretched out, and he was able to get me, you know, alert. My head was hurting me really, really bad, and I was able to call my doctor, and she was like, get to the emergency room, like, now. And she was on call. So it was quicker for us to drive there than to call the ambulance because of where we were at my in-laws. And so we got to the ER, and she actually had called, and they were waiting on me. So when I got there, my blood pressure was over 200. They said that I was at stroke level, and they thought that I was about to have a stroke. So I just remember my head was hurting me so badly. Like, I have never been in that much pain. Like, I really wanted to just die. And they started giving me medicines in the ER, and not looking at my history, not knowing that pain meds and things like that made it worse, and I had a negative effect. So they gave me morphine, and morphine was a mistake. So it made my head hurt so badly. I can't even describe the pain. So they started doing CAT scans and all these things on me to see what was going on, until finally she kept calling back and forth, and she was like, get her and bring her to me. And the ER was like, we're not bringing her until she is stable. And so they were finally able to get my blood pressure down. I think it was still really high. It was like 180 something, my top number. And they finally sent me to postpartum, where she was, and she was screaming, she was crying, she was like, oh my gosh, they trying to kill her, you know. And that's because of my history. And she was just so upset because she knew, she could see the state that I was in, and God had really kept me, really, because I should have had a stroke, but I didn't. To God be the glory. But anyway, they started running tests, and they was like, the baby cannot be back up here. You know, like, this is serious. And so they were saying my kidneys were showing like they were declining. My kidneys were showing kidney failure, my liver. And my husband was like, what? And I'm like, no, this cannot be. And so I was in the hospital literally for about 2 weeks after I had my son, because I was in discharge and then put back. And I was like, I'm not accepting this. You know, like, I'm not accepting this. Like, I'm not having kidney failure and liver failure and things like this. So once again, like with my daughter Promise, I asked my husband, I said, give me the oil. So I started anointing myself. And I don't know if you know the story of Hezekiah. Those of you who are in the Word, and Bible scholars may, but those of you who are not in the Word may not know. But basically, the word had come forth to Hezekiah that he was, you know, his life would be, he was going to die. Basically, he knew that he was not going to live long. He was sick. He wasn't going to be here for many years. And he turned his face to the wall, and it says how he prayed, and he had, you know, reminded God of, you know, the things, the faithfulness and what he had done. I'm just trying to briefly tell the story without going in too much in depth, and how God extended and added 15 years to his life. So I went into the shower, and I just started praying, and I said, God, I do not believe this is what you have for me. I said, I know you've shown me things. You've shown me my life. You've shown me different pieces of it, and this is not it. This is not where it ends. hands. And I was like, surely you didn't let me have a miracle. You didn't let me have my baby boy to now take me out of this place. And I was like, it's so much more that I have to do for you. And there's so much more I want to do. And so I just started praising. I went in when I took my shower, and I literally put my face against the wall. And I said, God, just like Hezekiah, I was like, I'm asking you to extend my years. And I was like, I want to see my child. I want to see him grow up. I want to, you know, be here to raise him, to nurture him, to teach him about you. And there's still a work that I have to do for your kingdom. And even though I was praying earnestly, I was praising every day, I still didn't see, you know, my test wasn't coming back changed, but I knew that they would. So I kept remaining in faith. And I said, it doesn't matter what the tests say, I am healed. By his stripes, I am healed. And I declared it every day. And then finally, towards the latter part, before I was, you know, started to do better, I remember I had to keep going to the bathroom. And the nurse was asking my husband, she was like, how many times has she gone, you know, to the bathroom? He's like, she's been several times. And I have to keep unplugging the, you know, machine or whatever to go on my own, because I was calling them, and they were like, well, she's going to the bathroom that much. It must mean her kidneys is, you know, starting to work well and stuff. So eventually what I'm trying to say is, as God once again restored me. My kidneys, they ran more tests. My kidneys, my liver, everything started to look back like it was supposed to. When they said I had all this failure, they didn't know what to do. So I just want to tell you that once again, God is a healer. He can do it. Remember, the number of your days shall be fulfilled. You know, I believe that I just prayed a prayer of faith. I don't believe that God was going to, you know, let my life end at that moment, but I wasn't going to accept that, you know, unless it was his will. And I said, God, your will be done, but I was not going to accept that. And you know, we cannot always accept everything that the enemy puts in our hands. Sometimes we just let it come and we accept it. We're too passive. We're passive believers. We're passive Christians, and we need to stop being so passive, and we need to say, no, I don't accept that. That is not God's will concerning my life. And we need to pray God's word. We need to speak God's word and let the enemy know that he is defeated, and let him know that we are not accepting, you know, what he's given us. So I just wanted to tell you to be encouraged, to know that God is a healer. He has healed my body on numerous occasions. I couldn't even tell you the full extent and detail of how severe that incident was without making the video way too long. And I don't like for these to be too long, because I want you to watch them in its entirety. But just know, I had kidney failure. I had liver failure. My blood pressure was over 200. I was ready to have a stroke. And I made it through. I got through, and here I am today testifying to God's goodness and his miracle working power. So enjoy, be blessed. Thank you again for the prayers. Continue to pray for me that my body will get well. And I will continue to pray for each and every one of you that are watching. And I pray that God blesses you. Good night.